She thought the knock on her door was just a late-night delivery. But the real truth wouldn't reveal itself until 3 in the morning. Picture this: you're tucked in bed, drifting in that cozy space between being asleep and being awake. The house is completely silent, except for the soft, rhythmic hum of your ceiling fan. The clock on your nightstand glows with the time, 3 a.m. It's that strange, liminal hour when the world feels both asleep and unnervingly alert. Then, you hear it. A soft but distinct knock-knock at the front door. Your first thought is to ignore it. Who could possibly be knocking at this hour? Maybe it's a food delivery for the wrong address, or perhaps a neighbor finally returning that book they borrowed weeks ago. You roll over, pulling the covers tighter around you, trying to slip back into your dream. But the knock comes again. This time, it's louder, more insistent. It's not an aggressive sound, but it's firm enough to pull you completely out of your sleep. A little annoyed but mostly curious, you drag yourself out of the warmth of your bed. The floorboards are cold under your bare feet as you make your way toward the front door. You know that feeling, right? That little knot of anxiety tightening in your stomach, your brain screaming, "Why are you even doing this?" But your curiosity is a powerful force, and it propels you forward. You reach the door and peer through the peephole. Nothing. Just the empty, dimly lit hallway of your apartment building. Maybe you imagined it. You pause for a moment, listening. Silence. Hesitantly, you turn the deadbolt and crack the door open just a few inches. Again, no one is there. The air in the hallway is still and cool. You can see all the way to the elevators, and there's not a soul in sight. Shrugging it off as a weird dream or your mind playing tricks, you start to close the door. But just as you do, the handle jiggles violently in your hand. It's a sharp metallic sound that echoes in the dead quiet of the night. Someone was right outside your door. You felt it. The weight, the force turning the knob from the other side. You fling the door wide open, heart pounding against your ribs, ready to confront whoever it is. But there's nothing. No shadow, no figure, not even the sound of retreating footsteps. You step back inside, your hand trembling as you quickly lock the deadbolt and slide the chain lock into place. As you turn away from the door, a sudden chill crawls up your spine. You hear it again, but this time, it's not from the door. It's the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the hallway behind you. Inside your own home, you whip around, eyes wide, scanning the short corridor that leads to your living room. It's empty. The moonlight filtering through the window casts long, eerie shadows, but there's no one there. And then, the scent hits you. It's unmistakable. The stale, acrid smell of cigarette smoke, mingled with something else. A faint, sweet perfume, almost like old-fashioned rosewater. But underneath it all, there's another smell, a coppery, metallic tampes that reminds you of iron. She had lived in that house for 5 years. Sure, there had been odd occurrences before, lights that would flicker and die for no reason. The faint ring of a phantom telephone that wasn't even plugged in, objects moving just slightly from where she'd left them. She'd always dismissed them as quirks of an old building. But this was different. This felt personal. It felt like an intrusion. For the next several weeks, the strange events escalated. The knock would return, always at the exact same time. 3:13 a.m., not 3:12, not 3:14, always 3:13. It was a single, patient knock. Sometimes, she would hear the doorknob turn slowly, the latch clicking as if someone was testing the lock. She stopped answering. She'd lie in bed, frozen, listening to the sounds, her breath held tight in her chest until the sun came up. She called the police multiple times. They would come, investigate, and find nothing. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints on the doorknob, other than her own. No footprints outside her door. They looked at her with a mixture of pity and suspicion, suggesting she install a security camera. She did. The camera recorded the empty hallway all night long. At 3:13 a.m., the video would show nothing, but the audio would pick up a clear, sharp knock. The lack of sleep and constant fear started to take their toll. She became a ghost in her own home, jumping at every creak and shadow. The scent of cigarettes and iron would appear at random moments, a suffocating presence in an empty room. The final straw came one night when she was in the bathroom. She looked into the mirror and saw, for a split second, a reflection standing behind her. It wasn't a clear image, just a tall, dark shape, but it was enough. She moved out the following week, leaving half her belongings behind. She couldn't bear to spend another night in that house. She never looked back. The house, I'm told, is still empty. It has been on the market for years, but no one stays for long. Tenants report a constant feeling of being watched, the unsettling smell of smoke, and, of course, the knock at the door in the dead of night. So what's the real takeaway from this? We often think of unwanted visitors as something we can see, something we can fight. But sometimes, the most terrifying visitor is the one that doesn't need to break down the door. It just waits, patiently, for you to open it yourself. And sometimes, you answer without even realizing you've let something in. Stay safe, and maybe double-check your locks tonight. Ever heard a cry in the dark, and then realized it was coming from under your own floor? Okay, so this story comes from a guy who was renting a room in one of those really old buildings. You know the type. Wooden floors that creak with every step, walls that seem to breathe, and that strange, unexplainable chill that settles in as soon as the sun goes down. It had character, he thought, a bit of history. He had no idea how much. The first few nights were normal. He'd come home from work, make dinner, watch some TV, and head to bed. The usual routine. But then, one night, something woke him up. It was late, probably around 2 or 3 a.m., that dead silent hour when the world feels like it's holding its breath. And in that silence, he heard it, a soft sobbing. It was faint, like someone trying to cry without making any noise. At first, he thought it must be coming from outside, maybe a neighbor or someone on the street. He strained his ears, trying to pinpoint the direction. But the longer he listened, the more unsettling it became. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It wasn't coming from the next room. It seemed to be coming from beneath him, right under the bedroom floor. He slowly lifted the bedsheet, his heart starting to thump against his ribs. He sat up, the old bed frame groaning in protest. He looked around the dimly lit room. Nothing. He checked the walls, running his hand over the cool, textured wallpaper. Solid. He even dropped to his knees and peered under the bed. The beam from his phone's flashlight cutting through the dust bunnies. Empty. But the sound continued. A quiet, mournful weeping that seemed to seep up through the very foundation of the house. He barely slept that night. The next morning, feeling a little foolish but still unnerved, he mentioned it to his landlord. He described the sound, the location, everything. The landlord, a gruff older man who'd seen it all, just shrugged. "It's an old place," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "Old places make weird noises. Pipes, the wood settling. You know how it is." But the tenant wasn't satisfied. It didn't sound like pipes. It sounded like a person. It sounded like grief. That afternoon, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, he decided to do a little investigating. He found a loose floorboard near the corner of the room, one that looked like it had been pried up before. Using a screwdriver, he carefully worked it free. He pressed his ear to the dark, narrow opening, and then he heard it again. The crying, only now it was clearer, closer. A wave of cold dread washed over him. He quickly put the board back in place, his hands trembling slightly. That night, the sobbing returned, right on schedule. It felt more insistent this time, more present. He knew he wasn't imagining it. He had to have proof. He took out his phone, opened the voice recorder app, and placed it on the floor right over the spot where he'd lifted the board. He hit record, then climbed back into bed, pulling the covers up to his chin. It took a long time to fall asleep, the muffled cries providing a grim lullaby. The next morning, the first thing he did was grab his phone. His finger hovered over the playback button, a part of him desperate to know, another part terrified of what he might hear. He took a deep breath and pressed play. At first, there was just silence, the low hum of the room. He fast-forwarded a bit, and then he heard it, the sobbing from the night before, captured perfectly. But this time, woven into the sound, was something else. A voice. It was barely a whisper, so faint he had to turn the volume all the way up and hold the phone to his ear. But it was there, a single, desperate phrase repeated over and over. "Help me, help me." His blood ran cold. This wasn't just a noise, it was a plea. He immediately sent the recording to his landlord. No shrugging it off this time. He demanded an explanation. A few hours later, the landlord called back. His voice was different, sober, resigned. He finally admitted the truth. Decades ago, long before he owned the building, a young woman had lived in that very room. She'd been reclusive, quiet, No one really knew her. One day, she just disappeared. Or so people thought. It wasn't until days later, when other tenants complained of a strange smell, that they found her. She had passed away in that room, alone. Her body had lain there for days, and by the time they discovered her, the floor beneath had started to, well, you can imagine. The building owners at the time patched everything up, replaced the flooring, and hushed the whole story up. They didn't want a tragedy to tarnish the property's reputation. The tenant didn't need to hear any more. He packed his bags that same day and moved out. He couldn't spend another night in that room, knowing who or what was trapped beneath his feet. And the rental, it's still active, it's still cheap. It's always listed as a bargain, a great deal for the area. Because people move in, and then they quickly move out. They do want to stay in a place where the night carries a sound you can't see, a cry you can't answer. It's a chilling reminder that just because the walls are silent, it doesn't mean the night is. Sometimes, the most terrifying secrets aren't in the shadows or behind the door. Sometimes, they're right under your feet. Have you ever taken a shortcut late at night? One of those back roads you kind of know, just to save a few minutes. My friend Alex and I used to do it all the time. We worked a late shift at a diner just outside of town, and by midnight, all we wanted was to get home. That's how this all started. With a shortcut. It was just after 1 in the morning, a Tuesday I think. The radio was playing some soft rock station, the kind that puts you in a trance on a long drive. We were laughing about a customer who tried to pay for a $20 meal entirely in quarters. The usual end-of-shift banter. To shave off about 10 minutes, Alex turned onto Old Miller Road. It's one of those classic rural routes, unlit, with a canopy of ancient oaks that seemed to swallow your headlights. The moonlight was struggling to get through, creating these weird, dancing shadows on the asphalt. We were maybe halfway down the road when it happened. The car just died. Not a sputter, not a cough. It was like someone flipped a switch. The engine went silent, the headlights blinked out, and the radio crackled into nothingness. We were plunged into absolute darkness, except for the faint, ghostly glow of the dashboard warning lights. We sat there for a moment, the silence suddenly deafening. "What was that?" I asked, my voice sounding small. Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I have no idea. Electrical, maybe. Let me check." He grabbed his phone, switched on the flashlight, and pushed the car door open. A blast of cold, damp air filled the car. The kind of air that smells like wet earth and decaying leaves. I stayed inside, my heart starting to pound a little faster. You know that feeling you get when you're somewhere you shouldn't be? It was washing over me in waves. I locked my door. Click. Then I locked Alex's. Click, just in case. Through the windshield, I could see the beam of Alex's phone light bobbing around as he opened the hood. He was muttering to himself, probably cursing the car. His job, this road. I kept my eyes scanning the tree line. It was a wall of black, impenetrable. And then, I saw it. A light, not a car light. A single, focused beam, like a flashlight, cutting through the trees about 50 yards away. It was moving, slowly, steadily, directly toward us. My breath hitched. "Alex," I yelled, my voice cracking. "Alex, get back in the car." He didn't hear me over the sound of him wrestling with something under the hood. The light kept coming. It wasn't frantic, it wasn't hurried, it was just methodical, a slow, deliberate walk. My mind was racing. Was it a local, a park ranger, or was it someone who saw two people stranded and decided to take advantage? "Alex, now," I screamed, banging on the window. This time he heard me. He looked up, first at me, his face a question mark, and then he followed my gaze toward the woods. He saw the light. He didn't hesitate. He slammed the hood shut, scrambled back into the driver's seat, and frantically tried the ignition. Nothing. Just a weak clicking sound. The figure with the flashlight was closer now. We couldn't make out a shape, just the blinding light pointing at us. It was maybe 30 yards away. Alex was trying the key again and again. Click, click, click. I was practically climbing into the back seat, trying to become as small as possible. The beam of light stopped moving. It just held steady, right on our car. Then, the person or whatever it was, started to move again. But this time, it was mirroring us. Alex, in his panic, started waving his phone's flashlight back at it, as if to say, "We see you. Stay back." The figure's light didn't waver, but then it began to move sideways, parallel to the road. It was circling us. Slowly, we heard a sound from the woods, a loud crack, like a heavy branch snapping underfoot. My heart leaped into my throat. Then another one, closer. It was moving through the underbrush, keeping pace with its own circling light. We could hear the crunching of leaves, getting louder, closer. It was right beside the car now, just out of sight in the darkness beyond the shoulder. Alex let out a yell of frustration and slammed his fist on the dashboard. And in that exact moment, the car roared back to life. The headlights flashed on, blindingly bright. The radio blared, and the engine hummed as if nothing had ever been wrong. Neither of us said a word. Alex slammed the car into drive and stomped on the accelerator. The tires squealed on the pavement as we shot forward, leaving that spot behind in a cloud of dust and fear. I didn't look back. I just stared at the road ahead, praying for the sight of a streetlight, a house, anything that signaled we were out of those woods. We didn't slow down, didn't even breathe, until the warm, orange glow of the city lights appeared on the horizon. We got back to my apartment and just sat in the car for a good 5 minutes. The engine still running, the heater blasting. We were both shaking. We tried to rationalize it. A hunter, maybe. A local playing a prank. But the way the car died and then miraculously came back to life, it didn't add up. Then Alex remembered. "The dash cam," he whispered. "I got one installed last month." We rushed inside and plugged the memory card into his laptop. We fast-forwarded to the moment the car died. The footage was grainy, the darkness almost total. But as our eyes adjusted, we saw it. Right after the car's lights went out, a silhouette emerged from between the trees. It wasn't just a shadow. It was a tall, slender figure. It just stood there, watching us. Then, as Alex got out of the car, it began to walk toward us. The camera didn't pick up the flashlight, but it captured the shape. We watched, mesmerized and horrified, as the grainy figure stopped, then began to circle. The camera didn't record any sound, so the snaps of the branches weren't there. It was just this silent, terrifying ballet in the dark. And then, right before the car started again, the figure stopped. It was directly in front of the car, partially obscured by the trees. And for just a single chilling frame, it raised a hand, not in a threatening way. It looked like a wave, a slow, deliberate wave goodbye. We never took that shortcut again. About a week later, we heard that Old Miller Road was closed indefinitely for maintenance. When Alex asked a local at the diner about it, the old man just shook his head. He told us that road has a history. Said strange things happen out there after midnight. He mentioned stories of a hiker who went missing decades ago, whose spirit is said to still wander the woods, sometimes trying to flag down cars for help, sometimes just watching. Was it a ghost, a prankster, or something else entirely? We'll never know. We never went back to find out. Now, we always take the well-lit main roads, even if it adds 10 minutes to our drive, because we learned a lesson that night. Sometimes a shortcut isn't a shortcut. Sometimes it's a dead end. And when your gut tells you you've made a wrong turn, you should probably listen. You think your roommate snoring is the worst thing you have to deal with. Trust me, after this story, you'll be grateful for it. What if your roommate isn't sleeping at all? What if they're just watching? This one is wild. Imagine this, a typical college dorm room. We've got 2 roommates. Let's call them Mike and Jay. Now Jay is a super light sleeper, the kind who wakes up if a pin drops. And lately, he's been noticing some weird stuff happening at night. One night, Jay is trying to sleep. Mike is supposedly fast asleep in his bed across the room. But Jay wakes up suddenly. It's exactly 2:47 a.m. He swears he heard pacing. He cracks one eye open, and the sight sends a shiver down his spine. Mike is sitting bolt upright in his bed, just staring blankly at the wall. Jay, still half asleep but definitely creeped out, whispers, "Yo, you okay?" Silence. Mike doesn't even flinch. He just keeps staring at that wall like it holds the secrets of the universe. Then, slowly, mechanically, he stands up and walks into their shared bathroom, closing the door behind him. Jay is completely freaked out, but he's a college kid. What do? You convince yourself it was a weird dream and try to go back to sleep. But the next night, it happens again. Jay jolts awake. He He glances at his phone. It's around the same time. This time, Mike isn't in his bed. He's standing by the window, his back to Jay, just looking out into the darkness. Jay's voice is barely a whisper. "What are you doing?" Slowly, Mike turns round. His eyes are wide, almost unnaturally so. In a flat, hollow voice, he says, "There, here, that's it." Jay absolutely loses it. He scrambles out of bed, fumbling for the switch on his desk lamp. The second the light flickers on, Mike is gone. He's back in his bed, covers pulled up to his chin, pretending to be asleep. But Jay isn't fooled. His heart is hammering against his ribs so hard he thinks it might burst. The following week is a living nightmare for Jay. The weirdness escalates. He starts hearing things in the dead of night, faint scratching sounds coming from the walls. He sees shadows moving in his peripheral vision, darting just out of sight when he turns his head. The room develops these strange, inexplicable cold spots, even with the heat on full blast. And Mike, during the day, he's the same old Mike, laughing, going to class, complaining about homework. But as soon as the sun goes down, he transforms. He becomes quiet, withdrawn. He stops shaving, and dark circles appear under his eyes, making him look gaunt and hollow. He's a different person, a shadow of himself. One morning, Jay is getting ready for class and sees Mike's phone lying unlocked on his desk. Curiosity gets the better of him. He picks it up and opens the photo gallery. His blood runs cold. The gallery is filled with pictures, dozens of them. They're all of their dorm room, taken from the perspective of someone standing in the middle of it. The room is empty, dark, nothing seemingly out of place. But the timestamps: every single photo was taken between 2:45 and 2:50 a.m. over the course of the last week. The exact times Jay had been waking up. Jay knows he can't ignore this anymore. He has to confront him. Later that day, he pulls Mike aside, phone in hand. "Mike, what is this? Why are you taking pictures of our room in the middle of the night?" Mike just looks at the photos, his expression blank. He shrugs, a strange, disconnected gesture. "I don't remember doing it," he says, and that's all Jay can get out of him. No explanation, no defense, just a complete lack of memory. That was the final straw. Jay packed his bags and requested an immediate room change. He couldn't spend another night in that room, not knowing what his roommate was doing while he slept. Sometime later, after he had settled into his new dorm, Jay was talking to an RA and happened to mention the strange events. What the RA told him made the whole experience even more terrifying. Years ago, in that very same dorm building, there was a series of bizarre break-ins. An unknown intruder would get into students' rooms in the early hours of the morning. They wouldn't steal anything. They would just stand there, in the dark, and watch the students sleep. They never left a trace, no sign of forced entry. The university quietly tightened security. They installed new cameras, changed all the locks, but the story goes, the intruder was never caught. The legend of the Watcher became just another campus ghost story. So, was Mike sleepwalking? Was he possessed? Or was he just a terrified kid, unconsciously documenting the presence of something else in that room? That feeling of being watched in the dark. Sometimes, it's not your roommate who's the weird one. Sometimes, it's the dark itself. What do you guys think was happening in that room? Let me know your theories down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there.